Hey guys, so we're back again this morning, and today I have brought on the lovely Tony from Free Agent, which I'm sure you all know who he is. I'm going to pass it on to Tony to introduce himself for those of you that don't know about Free Agent and what they do. But we've got loads and loads to talk about. Me and Tony are just going into some of the topics around AI that we want to discuss this morning. And if you want to get involved, then feel free to use the comment section. Now, this is live on YouTube right now. We're no longer live on Facebook because Facebook have messed up and done a load of things in the background to stop that from happening. So this will be on TikTok afterwards and also in the Facebook groups as a recording that you can play back. So without further ado, Tony, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you. So I think that might be my TikTok debut, actually. Not on TikTok. Social media too far for me thus far, but so yeah, I'm Tony Stevenson. I am the Senior Digital Enablement Manager at Free Agent. So my potted history, I spent the first 10 years of my career sort of bouncing around practice and industry, trained with the Big Four, a couple of years in industry, and then worked for a small, medium-sized firm, probably in St Albans, and have done various bits and pieces around tax. Essentially, corporate tax was my focus. Picked up my ACA along the way, and then it'll actually be 10 years this year. I jumped out of doing accounting day-to-day or tax day-to-day and jumped into the software world, where I went to work for Xero for 2 years. Then I was traveling for a year, a couple of other shorter stints with other software houses, and then I've been at Free Agent now for 6 years. So I get involved in a ton of different stuff internally, but you'll find me talking on sort of stages and webinars. I do a bunch of stuff internally to sort of help to distill what goes on in our world into Free Agent, and also I'm heavily involved in lead on the commercial side of practice integrations as well. So a bunch of different stuff there, and you'll find me in various different places.
And that's quite funny because I don't know if you know this, Tony, but most of my family are in IT. They're in the IT space. And I was the odd one out. So I went into accounting, but I've always loved the software aspects. And one of the main parts of my jobs have always been creating or implementing new software, or looking at like integrations and things that we can use. So I've always been like the tester. I've kind of naturally fallen into that. So yeah, that's quite interesting. Now, in terms of the AI sort of topic, it is a buzzword completely. And when we talk about AI, it's interesting that there's two sort of sides of the fence, where we've got the accountants and bookkeepers who are staying well away from it, don't want anything to do with it just yet. They want to see how it plays out in the market, and then they might adopt. And we've got the others over here who are very much taking the adaptive approach. They're looking into it, they're testing things out, seeing what works, what doesn't work, and trying to integrate as much as possible. Now, in my practice, I'm on this side. I test all sorts. Every Friday, I'm digging into something else that's new. ChatGPT being the biggest one, with it being the learning language model. But mostly now, I'm shifting away from ChatGPT and moving towards Copilot because of essentially having everything in one place, and that it's not open source data. But you know, when we talk about AI, what are we talking about? For those that, again, are coming new into the industry, the students, or those coming into bookkeeping and accounting, what do we mean by AI in our space?
So I've done, I'm fortunate, I guess, to work with some smart brains in this area, and don't badge myself in that bracket, but some smart people at Free Agent who know way more about the technicalities around this type of stuff than I do, and than I ever will do. But the way I kind of was asked to do a talk at the ICAW in November last year, and on this exact topic, right? And the way I've always sort of couched it is that there are two types of AI. I mean, there's tons of different types of AI, but from a practical use perspective, you've got kind of generative AI, which has become the big poster child for artificial intelligence in our world. ChatGPT, Copilot, all these different kind of large language models that have, really opened up huge worlds of possibility, but you have to do something to them to get them to work. And then on the other side, what I call embedded AI, which is stuff that works for you without you having to do anything. And that actually the people who've built that have taken on the responsibility of making it work based on something else happening that you don't have to prompt, essentially. So it's always been really helpful to me to think about it in those two different terms, because I think that they are very different solutions with very different problems at heart, and require very different levels of of interaction and thought from the individual using them. But ultimately, what I would say is that artificial intelligence is attempting to do something that the human would do themselves, but do it far accurately at scale.
Yeah.
So to be able to leverage more out of the same number of resources that you had in the first place.
Yeah, that's a really good explanation, actually. And I would put you in that room. It's funny though, because to me, AI has been here a long time, a very long
Yes.
time, and even going back to using Sage 50 desktop, it was there, and there's certain things that could be automated to a degree, and that's that other end of it's non-generative. It's there. It's doing the thing that you need it to do. One of the things that I sort of I always go to every AI talk possible when it comes to like Account X or like the Fab, etc. And I'm always keen to see a working example of a different type of AI. So where I'm not talking about, we know about Dext, we know about Apron, we know about those sort of products where it's looking at something and it's extracting data. That's great. Or bank feeds is another one. But I'm always keen to see inside the application itself, what else is new? What else can it do? So like analytically sort of thing. That's where I'm going with it, because in my practice, we're more focused now on, we do bookkeeping, we do year end, we do corp tax self-assessment, but we do more and more of what we would classify as the sort of coaching, mentoring, advisory side. So I'm always looking at different ways that we can use those applications to get that data out more quickly, and also more real-time information. Whereas if you'd have gone back 5-10 years, we used to spend I don't know, like 10 hours preparing an Excel workbook for management reporting. That when someone made one change,
ref, a sea of refs.
Yeah, but that's where I'm going with it. And it's for me, yeah, I'm just really keen to see where that's going, and where else we can pick that up. Yeah, because what were your thoughts on that?
So I think that yes, just sort of hark back right to the beginning of what you were talking about there, Rebecca, about it being around for a while. So it's been around for decades, and it's just found its poster child this year in generative AI, the subset of AI. But we've had a categorization engine built into Free Agent since 2020 that essentially takes transactions and runs them through our 2 steps of our algorithm to help to determine where transactions should be categorized to, right? And it's not rocket science, but it is a form of artificial intelligence. And some of our competitors have got similar things that just kind of work based on how you've done things before, which there is an element of that into Free Agent, but we also have an element of we've essentially taken all the data that has flowed through Free Agent and looked for patterns and trends, and then been able to kind of say, right, okay, Network Rail, that goes to travel, so we're going to do that for you, because 19 times out of 20, that's what people have done with it historically across the course of the last 15 years. So we're pretty confident that's what you're going to want to do. And in all honesty, the one that didn't do it out of the 20 were probably wrong. So so that kind of stuff, we've had that embedded in Free Agent for some time now, and we take a cautious approach to this, because and this is a sort of topic and theme we'll come back to again and again in this conversations, but it's that subject of trust, right? So we started that life with about 10% of transactions that were affected by it, and we had a bar of 95% accuracy that we were, or 95% certainty, because that's what people have always done, that we would operate under. And then gradually over time, we've looked for ways to to increase that, because we know that when people go into settings, because it put network rail to marketing, people go, oh, I don't like this, turn it off, and then never turn it back on again. Because why would you do that unless you had this groundswell of people coming and telling you, no, you must do that? But that doesn't happen. So we edged our way towards where we're at now, which is about 60-65% of your average client's transactions in free agent will be categorized by the engine, and it will be done with an accuracy rate of 93%, give or take. But we've edged there. We haven't gone, right, let's just switch this on and sort of wildly spraying shots out the court all over the place, and everyone's like, I don't want to play tennis anymore. It is a case that you have to build trust in these models, and you have to you have to build trust that if it doesn't do it right, that it's been considered that this needs to be a low risk place to not do it right, and those kind of things, because there's no system is 100% infallible. But so that is definitely like that kind of, and there's a bunch of other places within our product that take a similar approach to that sort of back end embedded. It's just going to do the stuff for you, the heavy lifting, and you don't have to really get involved in it. You just have to check it's okay, and then click approve, and then it sits there and does what you need it to. But the second piece that you describe around the generation of it, the generation of ideas and commentary around things. Again, I want to say it makes me nervous. It doesn't. It makes me excited, but it also does make me a bit nervous as well, because we kick some of these scenarios around. It's like when conditions are perfect, it's quite straightforward, right? And if you're an accountant or an advisor, you're trained in this stuff, and that you can ask it in natural language, show me this year's P&L, and it will do that, and then you can maybe download that information, and it'll start to create some commentary on it in the right hands, doing the right things. That idea is absolutely brilliant, right? Because it takes something that's perhaps quite challenging to do, and there are people within there are three cohorts within our industry, right? So there are people like yourself, Rebecca, who are on the advisory bandwagon and are doing that stuff, right? And they're comfortable in that environment. There's a group in the middle who are kind of like, I'd kind of like to do this, but I don't really understand what the steps are, and I don't really understand how I go from completing compliance obligations to delivering advisory. And then the people are like, that is not my lane. I am a numbers person, and I want to do numbers, right? And I don't believe for one second that every business in this country needs advisory, but I do believe that there are more that could do with it than are getting it, and that there are more accountants that would like to do it and actually could do with a tool that would help them. I do not buy into the narrative of get compliant, get the robots to do compliance so we can all do advisory. Like, no, that's not the end game, and that's outdated thinking. And I think that we thought maybe that might have been the case 15 years ago, but it certainly hasn't played out like that, and for obvious reasons. But I think that the idea of that is really exciting, and there are some tools out there that are nudging at that kind of thing. But again, it's that trust piece, isn't it? Right?
It's always going to be like, I think I've mentioned this a few times, that if you put crap into a system, you're going to get crap out of it. And one of the biggest issues that I have is when we're talking about bringing new people into this industry, like there's a lot of talk, I guess more so in like the top firms, where they're like, we'll get the staff in at this level who can churn and burn, or get AI to start replacing some of that and churn and burn. And then we'll get the people, we'll move them up so that they're in this advisory role, and they can look at that data, and they can, go through cherry pick, etc., go through clients. But my issue with that is you need to understand the fundamentals of the bottom line of what's happening. You really have to have a good understanding of the system and the general bookkeeping, all of the standard stuff. You can't skip to this point over here. You have to understand, because you could end up in a situation where you've got all these fancy tools and everything's working fine, etc. But where's your audit on that data and what those tools are doing? How reliant can you be that information you're seeing is 100% correct, that there are no errors, and how to get to that point yourself if that was completely stripped out. And that's, to me, is a concern that I don't think, again, a lot of people are necessarily thinking about just yet, because they're not at the steps where they're implementing AI properly into their teams.
No, and I think that piece of, we talked about it before we came on, didn't we? Like, if you ask an agent, show me my P&L, and it shows you the numbers, and you're like, this isn't quite right. You can take the 2 steps to go find the P&L to make sure that it's right, because you know where to get the source of truth from. Yes,
yeah,
you'd always do that as a a competent chartered advisor. You would take those steps, right, to make sure that the data was correct. But then you've got some sort of balance there, right? So is it like, it does help me, but actually I need to just verify first myself to make sure, and then I can build that trust over time. And that you're able to then go and ask it, look, give me 3 reasons why my P&L is better this year than it was last year, or, could you delve into that category and find out why, why that margin is skewed this month when actually it's not normally like that. What's the reasons for those types of things? And being able to ask it those questions, or to ask it to generate those topics and thoughts for discussion. So yeah, I do think there is a balance to be had of verification, and we can't just blindly trust this stuff yet.
No.
And we'll need to get to a point where we can trust it, but it won't be blindly.
No, I do be really, really I'm a bit nerdy. Most people know that at this point. But it'd be really cool if, how we've got dashboards in the different software programs.
Yeah.
If how you can see, sometimes you can highlight a specific nominal that you want to look at in more detail, or you want to keep a watch on. If you had something similar where you could see, key differences that month that have happened that are irregular, they don't quite look right, or they're, above a certain threshold, like a materiality, something like that.
Yeah,
you could do quite quickly, couldn't you?
Yeah.
And start using that software more intuitively, I guess. One of the things that I love, I have to say I love, because back in the day of Excel, I'm a huge Excel fan because I've had to use it all these years. But I used to take the transactional data from a piece of software, and then I would build out a report in Excel that would pull through that data. So I'd almost prepare a set of accounts based on the transactions, because we'd have to export the data from whatever package we were using and then import that into something else, like CCH, because that was the only option back in the day. Or another system like Iris for doctors back then. But now, like, for those that don't know, obviously in Free Agent, as an example, you can pull off micro FRS 105 sets of accounts in Free Agent that pre-populates all of that data for you, saving you that step. And that's another example. And you've got corp tax in there too. I would be keen, and you don't have to answer this, but to see where that goes. So if one day, you're able to run more complex accounts from the source data, as opposed to extracting and putting it somewhere else, that'd be interesting.
So I have to be careful, because obviously we have roadmaps, and we're relatively open about the direction of travel from from a free agent perspective. But what you've just described there is, how do I put this nicely, is something that there is an appetite among us to deliver something in that vein, right? How that will look, when that will happen, if that will happen, right? And there's a guy I work with called John Martingale, who is and his words always ring around my ears whenever I get asked any of these questions, which is that it is a plan, not a promise, right? Until it is in the product and it is built and functioning, it is a plan, not a promise, right? But that's kind of the direction that we'd like to see Free Agent go in from a reporting perspective. So one of the things that has evolved over time from a free agent perspective is reporting. So we started off quite basic, end user focused, and over the years we have evolved sort of gradually into the practice market. And then the last couple of years we've really lent into the practice market and understood that actually, you know, there are a bunch of things that we would like to improve or build that would really help practitioners to have a much more seamless experience of using free agent and not be found sort of sitting there going, oh, I can do this a bit quicker on another platform, or like there's all this great benefit here, but this thing I wish you just did it like this, right? So we've got a bunch of those things on our roadmap for a very practice focused. These are things that we really want to put in front of our practitioners to make their life easy. And there's some really cool stuff coming. That type of stuff is like the end of that game, right? So that's the end of the let's take reporting and let's build out a whole bunch of new functionality into reporting to be able to do move the data around better, extract data better, and then culminating in re-putting that data back together better into something that you can then serve up to your clients, or even potentially interrogate using some sort of tool like you've just described, Rebecca. The sort of these agent ideas of like, can you tell me why that nominal has dropped off a cliff in the last 6 months, or can you tell me give me some idea about which revenue stream I should be focusing on, those kind of things. So yes, it is. There's been a lot that's happened and a lot that's going to happen over the course of the next 18 months, 2 years or so, that will continue to just chip away at that practice experience of that person sitting in their chair using free agent on behalf of their clients or in conjunction with their clients to make that life easier.
One thing I'll just say, because I am aware that there are some people who watch this who are looking to get into this industry who don't understand the landscape yet because they've not experienced it. But for anyone who doesn't know, I'm going to kick this back to basics. Free agent, you can, it's a bookkeeping and it's accounting software, amongst other things. But in there, you can also run year-end accounts. You can run self-assessment, corporation tax. But you can't always do that within a software. Sometimes you have to extract that data and put that somewhere else, which is what ideally you wouldn't want to do if you can help it, because that's another step in the process and you want to keep everything streamlined. But one of the things that I'm beyond excited about, I have to say, is there's been a shift in the last 3 years, I'd say. Definitely the last 3 years. There was almost, I don't know, I've been doing this for now 16 years, would you believe? Getting old, Tony. Those first 10 years, it felt like every supplier and every piece of software that accountants and bookkeepers would use were very much, competitive against one another. And there wasn't that, let's work together and let's see where we can, introduce synergies between two. And now you see more and more, like with yourselves, client engager, that's the big one where you're now integrating with them, which is amazing to see. But there's others too, and it's nice to see that because it's given people like me, as practice owners and lots of other bookkeepers and accountants, that ability to have that streamlined process and to have it all talking to one another in one place. You know how your apps work, how they're talking to one another, and it's easier then if you've got staff, for example, to train them on. That's what we use. That's how that information gets from A to B. And there's always a bit of a concern if there's a break in that process. If that makes sense, where you're manually having to have somebody, manipulate that data somehow to get it somewhere else. So I love that. Are you able to tell us about that? Is that let's talk about it?
Interesting one. So like, I'll hark back to my time at Xero, right? And the ecosystem approach was one that was very much at the front of what Xero did, and that was fantastic because it's hard to find a product that they don't integrate with. However, it comes then with challenges around. What if we've got 2,000 apps that we've got to support? Then we need to kind of work with them to do that, and it's very difficult then to sort of partner with them in a partnership rather than as an integration, right? They're not quite the same thing. One is an evolution of the other, and I think that what then ended up happening, probably through no fault of anyone's really, is just that you've ended up in this sort of app overwhelm where you've got lots of sort of smaller products that do little bits and pieces, and actually difficult to know, well, how do I pick between the 55 different reporting tools or the 100 different data capture tools that are slightly different to the other ones, but essentially do the same functionality. And we all trend to a place of full feature set. And then what's the differentiator? The differentiator is UI and how you use the thing, right? How easy it is to use, how well it integrates, what the support is like. The human elements then come back into it, because we all sort of trending towards a place of doing the same things like in a box on a tick box exercise, but actually the way that it's done and that kind of thing becomes more important. And what I think is really interesting, I put a post about it on LinkedIn yesterday, which was this sort of trend, this new wave of apps that are coming out that are perhaps taking an overall, we use the framework of jobs to be done within Free Agent, which is it's not like like, oh, type in here and put your expenses in here and then push this button and then that gets done. It is, the job is get paid, right? And there are steps along that way and different things. Deal with your money, and actually there are apps that are going, do you know what, there are two sides to that. We can have both in one app, and then we only have to pay one subscription, and we only have to learn one piece of technology. Client Engage are a really good example. It's been brilliant working with Johan, and they're a really good example of, they've come flying out the gates, both in terms of the industry, but also in terms of our partnership with them as well, which has been really, really good to work with, Johan and the very lean, very high performing team that they've got of 3 or 4 of them. And they have seen an opportunity to sort of, well, we've got practice management, but we've also got e-signing in there as well. And we've also got pricing in there as well, which, and letters of engagement, which was historically had been a standalone product in GoProposal and Ignition. We're going to have that as a feature of our product. And then we've also got a stack of other integrations that allow, like, they've got a deep integration with one of the AML providers that allows you to do AML within their tool. And actually they've seen the opportunity to learn from the evolution of our industry, not just in their space but in other spaces as well, and be able to put something together that that does that. And and that will drive the other products to do similar, like Bright Manager and and the other tools that are out there that do these types of things. So I think that what we've done historically up to about a year ago was not huge amounts in this space. So we do have a bunch of integrations, and there were people that used to focus on them, and then they moved on from Free Agent, and actually we've sort of taken a slightly different approach this time, which was what we're trying to do is curate a list of the top 100, top 200, and work deeper with them, so that there's a bit less choice. But actually, we kind of know what the preeminent ones in each space are, and we know that when we're going to if we are in that situation where we do need to do things outside of Free Agent, that Tax Filer and Tax Calc and Iris are the tools that are prevalent in that space, and that you've got Dext, and now you've got Apron, and you've got Auto Entry, and some of the other tools, and we've got a Smart Capture tool within Free Agent as well. So I think we get to this place where it's a sort of the idea of bundling or unbundling, and we're probably in a bundling phase at the moment, where some of these tools are bringing in 2 or 3 other bits of stuff that sort of nicely knits together, and then it's much easier to manage the API. It's much easier to have a deeper partnership and to be able to kind of actually sit down and do some brainstorming. It's just like, what does our co-customer want out of this, rather than it being a case of like, what does our customer want and what does their customer want, and those two things might not be the same, and actually there's some crossover, and that we can think about these things from the beginning, so that again, that practice experience is connected. And I don't I don't envy like students coming into this industry, but there's a lot to kind of wrap your head around, and I think that I think the institutes as well perhaps are hopefully looking to deliver a bit more of this type of stuff, rather than it just being about debits and credits and audit and that kind of thing.
This is what's really exciting to me, that I talk to the different professional bodies, and I've got we talk about things, and what's the next steps for students, what can we offer that's going to help them in the real world, not just on paper. What does that look like? And I can confirm that they are looking at better ways to do things with students, and to get them prepared for the real world of using the likes of AI, using different technologies, and what that looks like. And I'll just say, as well. I'm really, really glad that this industry, just as a whole, has got to this point now where we have got the bundles with the different competitors, because just think of everybody in that one room and all the different angles that they're coming from to deliver that service to clients. Whereas before, you're very much focused on, if you're just an AML platform, you're only going to be focused on the AML part, not the full onboarding, what that looks like, the next step. So you're saving time and energy and giving the best possible solution to us bookkeepers and accountants. So yeah, it's nice to see, because we are moving more towards that collaboration across the board. Like, yeah, it seems to be, we're pushing for that anyway from our side. There's a big group of us who are like, collaboration over competition any day.
Absolutely right. And I think that there's always, I'm blessed. I've worked in practice for 10 years. I've seen it, right? But that was 10 years ago. So,
Yeah.
Times have moved on a lot in a lot of practices, but they also haven't in a lot as well, probably the bigger number.
Yeah.
And I think that it's very challenging to work with accountants and bookkeepers, because the channel was so flooded by so much technology, and it's great if you've got an appetite for it and you love it and you get excited by it, but do you hear occasional horror stories that it's like, oh, my software vendor doesn't understand me, they don't understand the world that I work in, they don't understand how my day takes shape and what's important to me. And I think that we can always do better, but the software providers that stand out are the ones that do try to listen to their partner base or have some experience built into what they do around how this stuff operates, because it isn't a standard business model, right? It isn't like we take widgets, we smash those widgets together and we sell those widgets. It is you're selling time, you're dealing with emotions, you're dealing with deadlines, you're dealing with institutes and charters and HMRC, and it's a complicated, and you sat there and looked at the yellow tax tollies books, right? There's a lot of information in there, and that's just the tax bit of it, right? And it changes all the time. There's tons of stuff there, and and it is easy to forget as software providers that accountants, the amount of times I've heard people sort of like come into this world and go, it's fine, we're just going to go to the accountants and we're going to say, go sell our product, and we'll give them a little bit of a kickback. And I was just like, right, let's just stop there. Like, do you think you're the first people that thought of that? No. It doesn't work like that. It has to be a partnership, and it has to be a partnership built on some understanding, right? And that understanding evolves all the time. So it is it's an exciting time, and I think there's always change, there's always different elements that come into it, and different trends and things, but ultimately, perennially, the challenges remain the same, right? They are price right, find good people, make sure you're compliant, make sure that you're giving the best service you can to your clients. There's a dozen things or so that are always challenges in different forms. And I was talking to Lucy Cohen about this recently, and I said, but those challenges keep coming back. And she was like, no. She said, they come back in different forms. So you'll solve it for one employee, and then you'll hire another 10, and suddenly it's a problem again, because onboarding was great when you had one, but that solution doesn't work anymore. You need a new one. That was the right solution at the time. It's now the wrong solution because you've got 8 employees or 15 employees or 50 employees or a second office or whatever. So they evolve and change, and they're perennial, but they look different. Right?
So to finish on that, then I'd say the one constant in our industry is that it's always changing.
Change, yes, exactly. Yeah. Change is your norm, and if you're comfortable with that, you'll do just great.
So then, right, we're going to end it there. But Tony, firstly, I think we need to get you back in 6 months' time to see where free agents are and what's going on, because there's going to be so much going on in this space. But also, for those that want to get hold of you, how can they do that? So where are you? What can we do?
It won't take you too long to find me on LinkedIn, I'm sure. That's where I spend most of my time. I don't concern myself with X or TikTok just yet. So yeah, LinkedIn's my professional platform. You can root me out through Free Agent. I'm talking on a webinar tomorrow, so for those of you that would like to join, myself, Johan, Fozia and Mark will be talking about tech stacks, so a bunch of the stuff we've covered today. So you're more than welcome to go sign up through the Free Agent website, and I'm sure it'll be Johan put a post up this morning and last week about it with the link on, and I've done the same. So for anyone that wants to hear about more, get into more depth about this kind of stuff, then you're more than welcome to come join the 500 or so of the people that are registered for it, and I'm sure it'll be a fun learning experience for all. But yeah, I'm delighted to come back. There's, you know, yarning on about our space is my favorite thing to do, so yeah, you'll never get a no from me.
Do you want to send me a link to that, and I can send that out? I'll post it in the Facebook groups and on YouTube on the community tab, so that everybody's got access.
Absolutely.
So yeah, well, it was a pleasure as always, Tony. We could go on forever, but I'm conscious of the time. So yeah, thank you so much for joining me again, and yeah, we'll catch you all in the group. See you soon.
Pleasure.